Michael Chandler might just be the biggest cheat in MMA currently. Now, we all saw that Charles Olivera 2 fight where he pulled off a range of different ways to break the rules. However, this has happened in more than one fight. We're going to be bringing up that Olivera 2 fight, but we're also going to be using the Dustin Poirier fight to prove that this is not just him breaking the rules, this is him doing it intentionally to cheat and gain advantage over his opponents. Now, as you can clearly see, we got in poking Charles Oliveira in the eyes here, but we're going to start off with the Oliveira 2 fight and basically just go through all the times he cheated during this fight. So we're going to start off with an eye poke. You're not allowed to poke people in the eyes. Now, these little things I've got up where it says 2, eye gouging of any kind. Eye gouging by any. This stuff here is the official unified rules of MMA. This is on the UFC's website. Granted, it does say 2017, but I doubt they're going to say, oh, you can poke people in the eyes now. So I'll leave the link to that in the description. You have a look at. There's about 30 different rules. Some being updated, some haven't. I'm going to use the ones that haven't been updated. So, eye pokes, fence grabs, that type of stuff. So, you're not allowed to poke people in the eyes. Now, as you can clearly see by my nicely drawn arrow here, he is poking Charles Olivera in the eye. Now, as you're going to learn in a second, you're also not allowed to extend your fingers into someone's face while moving forwards, or while we're moving backwards for that matter. Now, this is because John Jones used to do it all the time, and that's why it has a little asterisk next to it, because it's just for the UFC. He just used to move forwards and backwards with his finger in people's eyes. And it's really off-putting because you're going to poke him in the eye. It's basically like saying, oh, don't move forward, so you're going to get it, you know? So, he's poking Charles in the eye. And it's not exactly like a straight eye poke to when, ow, you've just poked me in the eye. It's more of a scratch. And if you've ever been scratched in the eye, it's not the same as a poke where it just hurts. It's like a stinging feeling because you're like scraping the top of the eye and you're like scratching it, but it just stings because every time you open your eye, the like liquid mixes with the scratch and it hurts. So, because I've had that done to me before, it's horrible. It just hurts for hours, and that's really going to put someone off in a fight. So Chandler gets a massive advantage by doing that. Anyway, moving on to the next eye poke, which is clearly a very on purposeful eye poke here, where he not only extends his fingers out, which you can see here, rule number 9, he's not allowed to do, and he's also not allowed to poke people in the eye. Now, he's trying to blind Charles Oliveira. This one was on his right eye, this one's on his left eye. He is pretty much blinding him. That looks like he's forcefully putting his fingers in Charles Oliveira's eyes. It's absolutely insane how we got away with this. Now, what the official rules say about a point deduction is the referee can look at it. If he sees it and he deems it worthy of a point deduction or worthy of a stoppage, he stops the fight. And if he seems it worthy of a point deduction, then he can then start deducting points. This is at least a stoppage, right? At least a stoppage. But this probably, if the referee doesn't see it, whatever. But this referee, as you're going to find out in this fight, is either very lenient or straight up blind, because we're going to move on to fence grabs. This is a very blatant fence grab. Leon Edwards did this in a title fight against Kamaru Usman in the third fight. Immediate point deduction. Chandler didn't even get a warning for this, so the referee in this fight clearly does not know what he's doing. But as you can clearly see, rule number 15, you're not allowed to grab the fence. However, what you are allowed to do is you're allowed to put your fingers and feet through the mesh of the fence. Let's say if there were ropes, you're allowed to put them through the ropes. You're not allowed to grab onto them, but you're allowed to put them through the mesh. I don't know why they allow that. It seems like it's helping people to cheat, but they allow it for some reason. I don't know why. But the legality around this is you're not allowed to grab the fence to help you to control your body position or your opponent's body position. And it says that somewhere within this paragraph. This is to prevent a takedown. Now, Charles did end up getting the takedown, but he gets the takedown in half guard, where Chandler manages to wrap up his legs around Charles's legs and basically just cause a stalemate for the rest of the round. So if you watch round 1 of the fight, Oliveira roughly gets a takedown around 2 minutes left in the round. And Chandler manages to stall out the fight because he was in half guard. Now, we got into that position by basically just holding the fence and allowing him to get put down to that position. Very crazy, if you ask me, but whatever. Didn't get a point deduction for that. That's controlling both body positions. It doesn't really matter. This next one is clearly preventing a takedown. And as you can clearly see in this left image, that is a blatant fence grab. And Charles is looking directly at it as well. If the ref wasn't blind, he would have at least changed the position around. Because what the referee can do is he can, if it's a fence grab to prevent position changes, he can put the fighter that isn't grabbing the fence in a dominant position. But the referee does nothing. This is at least a point deduction in my eyes, because it's grabbed the fence twice on 2 separate occasions in 2 different rounds. Doesn't really matter. Preventing a takedown, clearly here. And then this third one that he did is basically just to prove, like, this is not illegal. It's borderline, but it's not. And this is basically just to prove that it's intentful. And I've got another little arrow here to prove that I can draw. It proves that this is intentful. Now, this isn't illegal. It looks like he's grabbing the fence here, but like it's terrible quality. I don't think he is grabbing it purposefully. Well, no, not purposefully. I don't think he's grabbing it to stop Charles from doing anything. He's not really controlling in position, so it's not an illegal fence grab. But it proves that he is prone to grabbing the fence, and it's just a habit that he does, or that it's purposeful. So, which means that he is cheating very intently. But, you know, he should at least get a... I've just drawn another arrow here. He should at least get a point deduction for these 2 here, and this one proves that it's pretty much intentful. We're not quite intentful yet, but we'll get on to the really bad stuff in a second. So, the fact that he didn't get a point deduction for any of these things, the eye pokes, the fence grabs, nothing, shows that the referee didn't even intervene, mate. And the thing is, the referee is stood there in the cage looking at the fight. The fact that we can see it on broadcast and he can't see it. Now, I know we've got a bunch of different angles on broadcast, and the referee has never seen it from this angle. But this angle here, the referee's seeing it. And this angle here, the referee is 100% seeing it. So I don't know what fight he's looking at, but he's not looking at the same fight. Moving on to the next broken rule, that is glove grabs. You're not allowed to hold your opponent's glove. You can control their hand, but you're not allowed to hold the actual material of the glove. Now, Chandler in this one is wrapping his fingers into the palm of Oliveira's hand. So when you wear these MMA gloves, what there is your palm is free, but there is the little like Velcro wrap that goes round. You can yam your fingers in there and basically just hold this hand out, which you're obviously not allowed to do. It's very illegal. You can hold on to your own gloves, but you're not allowed to hold on to someone else's gloves, which you can clearly see him doing here. Now, holding gloves isn't really a point deduction worthy crime. It's kind of just stop doing that. But it proves that he is very prone to cheating. He does it again here, and Charles is literally complaining to the referee. You can see his face. Now, the referee stood roughly about, you see where the image ends? He's about stood there. Charles is complaining to the referee about this, and the referee still does nothing, which basically means that he does not care. So he's either been told not to care, which is a big conspiracy, or that he just is a terrible referee, and he shouldn't be refereeing. Anyway, we're going to get into the bad stuff now. Strikes to the back of the head. Now, I counted 4 direct strikes. Some of them were forearms. Some of them were actual fist shots. I'm not going to show all of the forearm ones, but there was about 7, maybe 8 total strikes from this position. Most of them were to the back of the head. You're not allowed to hit to the back of the head in MMA. And this is very clear. If you feel the structure of your head, the front of your head and the back of your head, it's very different. You're not allowed to strike to the back of the head in MMA. Now, Chandler, and here's the part about where I think this is very intentional from Chandler. We're going to get into more back of the head strikes in a second, but if you're throwing a hammer fist and your opponent's back is facing you or going vertically upwards, if you're throwing a vertical strike going down, There's no possible way that can land on your opponent, the side of opponent's head. If you're throwing vertical strikes and your opponent's back of the head is facing you, it's always going to be hitting the back of his head because you're going vertically down. So he lands on 4 separate occasions and the referee doesn't stop it. And it looks slightly bare because it's in single like frame things, like in a slideshow type thing. But in actual real-time speed, it's just bam, 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 bam. He has no regard whether it's hitting the side of his head, because when you're in this position here, the only way you can hit the side of someone's head is if you come in at an angle. He is going vertically down, which proves that he does not care whether it hits the back of his head or the side of his head, which proves to me that's intentional. But we're going to move on to the Dustin Poirier fight now, because this was absolutely ridiculous as well. So we're going to start off with the back of the head shots. As you can clearly see here, Chandler is going straight to the back of his head. It's clear because Dustin Poirier's glove is protecting like the back side of his head, and then he's got his forearm protecting the side of his head. Chandler notices there's an opening at the back of his skull, so he throws 5 strikes to the back of his skull. Now, these are also going vertically down. There is no plausible way where if you throw a vertical strike in this position, it does not land on the back of his head. Well, this is when Dan Miragliotta gets involved. Now, this is another rule of MMA. I didn't even know this even existed. You're not allowed to disregard the referee's instructions. Dan Miragliotta basically taps Chandler on the arm and says, Chandler, you can't hit him to the back of the head. These are illegal strikes. Look at Dustin Poirier on the floor. Look at the way Chandler is going to hammer fist down. There is no possible way that can ever hit anywhere other than the back of his head. Anyway, you're not allowed to disregard referee's instructions. So you have to listen and follow the instructions of the referee at all times. You're not allowed to just be non-compliant. So Dan Miragliotta, seeing that he's throwing very blatant illegal strikes, steps in and says, Chandler, you can't do this, and he taps him on the arm. Chandler ignores this and strikes another 3 times. And as you can see on the 8th strike, Miragliotta steps in and grabs Chandler's arm. So basically just pull it away and say, no, stop it now. You've thrown 8 illegal strikes now. I'm going to have to start deducting points. Chandler didn't actually get a point deduction for this, which is absolutely insane, which is where the conspiracy theory comes in. It doesn't really matter. So what does Chandler do? Does he do option A? Does he stop throwing illegal strikes? Option B, does he acknowledge that Dan Miragliotta is doing that and then just, go back to doing it? Or option C, he wrestles his hand away and goes back to hitting him in the back of the head. He wrestles Dan Miragliotta's hand away. Remember, you're not allowed to disregard a referee's instruction. He wrestles his hand away and continues to hit him in the back of the head to bring our total up to 11 strikes to the back of Dustin Poirier's skull. Look at it. Look at the way he's lying in the top right picture. He is lying in a way where you cannot physically hit the side of his head. He only hits the back of his head. It's absolutely insane. This should have been a point deduction. There is no way that this 11 strikes to the back of the head is ever not a point deduction in MMA. I don't know how he got away with this. Now, they were obvious strikes as well. Commentary was saying it. Commentary usually don't say it, but commentary are saying these are illegal strikes here. You cannot land these. 11 strikes to the back of the head. That's worse than the Charles one. Absolutely insane, but that's not even it for this Dustin Poirier fight. Fish hooking. Fish hooking, as you can see, number 4 here, is where you put your fingers in someone's mouth. This didn't get noticed by anyone until Dustin Poirier brought it up. Or by, you got noticed by a few people on Twitter, but they don't really matter, do they? You're not allowed to put your fingers in someone's mouth. Chandler puts his fingers in his mouth, and this proves that it's intentional. He puts his fingers in his mouth, lifts his head up, and gets the rear naked choke. If he just accidentally shoved his fingers in his mouth and went, oh, sorry, and whipped them out straight away, sure, fine, whatever. Doesn't really matter. Chandler puts them in his mouth and lifts his chin up so he can engage a rear naked choke. So that doesn't happen by accident. You can try and lift someone's chin up, but you put it in his mouth. You know it's his mouth. He acknowledged that it's in his mouth at the press conference. And then he still proceeds to lift his head up so he can put in the rear naked choke. That proves that it's not unintentional. That proves that it's not by accident. he doesn't accidentally put your fingers in someone's mouth and use it as a lever to lift their head up. The fact he uses it proves that it's not that it's not by accident. Now, if you add in the fact that he hits multiple illegal strikes in many different fights, I mean, the Charles Olivera fight, there were many different fouls. He should have at least got a point deduction. Should have got a point deduction for this absolute tomfoolery in this one, and definitely should have got a point deduction for this thing. Which basically just concludes to me that he is using these purposeful rule breaks to try and get an advantage over his opponent in his fights. And because he's never got a point deduction for it, ever, then he's just going to keep using them. He's going to keep fence grabbing, very obviously, because the referee clearly doesn't care. He's going to keep striking to the back of someone's head, ignoring the referee's intervention. This should have been a point deduction because he blatantly ignores the referee. Like, fish hook is absolutely... You cannot put your fingers in someone's mouth and use it to your advantage to get a rear naked choke in. You cannot poke people in the eyes and try and blind them in a fight. Chandler is the dirtiest fighter in the UFC currently. With all that evidence. Like, John Jones, when you say Jones is dirty with his oblique kick, he's only fought once, right? He didn't use any dirty tactics against Garn, and he didn't really use too many against Stipe, right? He's not that dirty anymore. He's still a pretty dirty fighter. But he's not like, and we can talk about Chandler with steroids because he has a very good physique for someone who makes 155. And for someone who's a professional fighter nearing 40 years of age, and he looks like a bodybuilder. And he also has a HGH gut. Now, if you don't know what that is, it means a human growth hormone. Now, I wasn't planning on him adding this in because it's very I didn't really want to speak on this too much, but he has, maybe you can see in this one, as you it's near Dustin Poirier's leg. He has a gut of basically just muscle, and that is known as a HGH gut because bodybuilders get it when they inject HGH. Now, I don't want to start throwing stuff around saying our channel is clearly on steroids, but if he's willing to go to the lengths of grabbing the fence, fish hooking, and poking people in the eye, maybe, there's a good chance that he could be using performance-enhancing drugs. I'm just going to say, right? Maybe he's not on them, UFC do drug test, whatever. Maybe he's just got, he could be microdosing. Microdosing's a thing, but maybe he's not. Maybe he's just got very elite level genetics. Maybe he does. Either way, he is a very dirty fighter, and I wouldn't put him past him, right? If you enjoyed this video, let me know. Chandler's clearly the dirtiest fighter in the UFC. I will maybe do more videos like this, depending how it goes, but yeah. So I'll see you all next time. See you in a bit. Goodbye.